Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to another Better Together Faith podcast. My name is Brady. This is my wife, Melissa. This is Gabe and Amanda Sherman, and we're so glad to be back with you again. These are always a lot of fun. It's good getting together with you guys, all right? So, Gabe, Amanda, we've got a story for you to start the night off here. It fits so good with what we're going to talk about. Yes. And maybe you have, like, kids and hospital stories or ER visits. Most parents will eventually end up in at least an urgent care or an ER sometime in their parenthood journey. So we made it a long time with our kids, but I'm gonna let Melissa tell you a little story that happened with our oldest, Noah, when he was probably about first or second grade. So
this is good. I'm gonna get comfortable.
This is really good. So Melissa.
So I remember getting the call. I was at work. I was in the middle of a meeting presenting, and they rush in and say, Noah needs to go to the hospital.
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh, my goodness. Yes. So I'm talking to Lori on the phone, and Noah has apparently stuck magnets up his nose. And they're on.
Yeah. And they were the kind of magnets. What made it even better, I think my parents had bought them these magnets, and they're like the magnets that they're like rare earth magnets. You build things with them, right? And so they're little. They're like pea-sized, magnets that are like square, I think. And anyways, and so he was It was a gift from the grandparents. All right.
Yes. So he's trying to do some kind of piercing. I don't really know what's going through his first grade head. But eventually they get stuck up here, lodged up there. So.
And by lodged, are they like connecting?
They're connected.
Through his
so he was trying to make it like kids do. He was taking them and he was putting like one on like the inside of the nostril, one on the out. And it would look like he had like a little nose, piercing. Well, then he put one up each nostril. Well, you know what magnets do, right? They look for the path of least resistance. And so those suckers went from here up to here.
Dude.
And they went as far as they could go up and as close as they could join together, and they locked right up in his nostril up here, and we couldn't get him out.
No.
And so it was off to
the emergency room. We finally got in there, and it took a doctor and probably 4 nurses to hold that boy down. And he was pulling arm hair. He was grabbing faces. He is a fighter. I will never forget it.
It was traumatic.
And there was nothing that I could do. I was just watching, thinking, "Oh my goodness!"
So, if you're wondering how they got him out, you probably got to know that. Like, there's no pretty way to get magnets out of the nose. We were probably like one more attempt away from like surgery. It was going to be a big deal.
My goodness.
And so the dad and me kind of got like toughened up. I'm like, we're gonna hold you down, and we're gonna get these out because I don't want to have to,
Right.
And so they took some kind of little tweezer things. They magnetized them and put them up in there, and were able to grab them and pull that back down his nose.
Wow.
That's so cool.
The thought of it kind of makes your eyes water, know?
Right.
But anyways, it kind of ties into our topic tonight. And so maybe you have stories like that of times in your life where you've needed healing or you've needed help, all right, beyond yourself. And so where do you normally go? Well, a lot of times we go to a physician, right? We go to the doctor. Well, we're going to talk tonight about going to the great physician and that the understanding that God is our healer. And so, Gabe, why don't you kind of introduce this name of God?
Absolutely. So, and that is such an awesome story, by the way. Like, I have my own first grade story where it took a team of nurses and a doctor to hold me down. Completely different, no magnets. But yeah, it's an awesome story, and it is funny. Like, whenever we experience some sort of serious pain or incident, we know right where we're going, right? You're going to the ER, you're going to the urgent care, because what you believe is that by going there, healing will happen. You'll find somebody that can fix a thing. And it's incredible to know, right, whenever we start to consider all the different types of healing that we need in our lives, that we serve the God who heals. And that is the name that we're going to look at tonight, the God who heals, Jehovah Rapha. And we're going to look at that. It first appears in Scripture in Exodus. And what we know about Exodus, right? We've got the nation of Israel. They were slaves in Egypt. They've been delivered from slavery. God healed them of that first, right? And now he's taken them out into the wilderness. And so they're in the wilderness. And as we look at this, We're going to be in Exodus 15, verses 22 through 27. So, Amanda, if you could read that real quick.
So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people complained against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. When he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them and said, "If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you."
Perfect. That's great. Perfect. And again, this is consistent with the other names that we've kind of went through in this study, where we're looking at the first use of that particular name. And what I think is cool is again, this is Genesis and Exodus, first couple books of the Bible. It's the first experiences that people are having with God, and he's showing them who he is, and these names matter.
The fact that it doesn't show up later in Scripture, that God's showing himself right from the beginning.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And it sets a beautiful context for the rest of the entire Bible. Is we know that we serve the God who heals. And I love that, because I think it's one of those things where there's everybody watching this, and the four of us on this couch have been at a place in our life where we have needed healing. For some of us, it's physical healing. Some things hurt. There's a sickness. There's a disease. We bring that need to God, and we ask for healing. Maybe it's emotional healing. Maybe there's brokenness that has happened in people's lives because of certain situations or circumstances, and we can bring those to God and ask for healing. Maybe it's mental, right? Maybe there's some mental health challenges. We know that mental health is a huge topic right now, and I think sometimes we miss the fact that God can heal there as well, and so we run to other things as opposed to coming to Him first. And so, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. The healing that we need from time to time, where we are broken spiritually. God throughout Scripture shows that He's more than capable in each and every one of those areas. And so tonight, what we wanted to do is talk a little bit about some real life experiences that we've had with Jehovah Rapha, who has brought healing in our lives. And so I'm gonna ask Amanda to kind of jump in and share a little bit of her testimony, because many of you guys know us and have known that we have battled with Amanda's health for years and years, and it's been a real challenge, and there's been some serious ups and downs, but we've seen God move in powerful ways. And so, over to you.
Okay, so the Lord has really just impressed upon me that I need to share this part of my story, and it is something that is really hard for me to share. I mean, really hard for me to share, and it carries a lot of just embarrassment and just some shame even. But I feel like I need to. If it can help anybody else get through something similar, I know that I've got to just tell some people. So, so basically, when right after Gabby was born, she's getting ready to turn 16. I was working as a nurse, and I started to have a lot of health problems, and I started seeing a bunch of different specialists trying to get some answers for what was happening. We didn't know. And so I saw a rheumatologist. They ended up diagnosing me with multiple autoimmune things that were going on. And one of my main issues was that I was hurting. And so the rheumatologist referred me to a pain specialist. And I thought, okay, I'll see whoever I need to see just to figure this out. And so we had a long treatment plan. I mean, there with injections and oh my gosh, I can't even. I had a nerve stimulator placed surgically in my back to help deaden the nerves. I had that placed twice, and I I can't even remember all the treatments. There were so many, but it ended up that they recommended pain medicine. And so I started taking pain medicine, and what I found was that as I was taking pain medicine over a number of years, that what I know now that I didn't even realize then as a nurse, I didn't even put two and two together. But when you're on pain medication, it makes you hypersensitive to additional pain responses. So you take pain medicine because you hurt, but then it actually makes you more sensitive to pain, and so it just exacerbates the whole process, and it causes this like crazy cycle of unending pain, honestly. And so there was a period of about, I don't know, I think it was around 7 or so years, where I was, my quality of life had just gone down the tubes. I was, there's so many side effects from medication that strong, and so many side effects, being sleepy at all hours of the day and night, and you just have no quality of life. Honestly, you're just miserable. And there was I would say the most of that 7 years, I was, I could not see an end in sight. I was hurting 24 hours a day. I was never getting relief. And it was so emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. It just takes your will to live away, honestly. And gosh, it was hard. But when we moved to Virginia, I needed to find a local physician, and so I went and saw a new pain doctor to try to continue on with my treatment plan, and the first doctor I saw, he said, oh gosh, he said that I needed to go to rehab, and that's like it's like not something I ever would have imagined anybody saying to me.
And so here I am. I was at the time, I remember the very moment that this happened, right? Because Amanda called me. And I'm I was down in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. And we were getting ready to host this big press conference. We were talking about our lunar program, and we were going to be showcasing our lunar capsule that was going to be, kind of mock-ups. It wasn't the actual capsule. Actual capsule was down at Kennedy. But we were going to be talking about the architecture of this lunar program, and had all the press there. And I get being a good husband, I got a call from my wife, and I immediately declined it. Because I was like, I'm doing big things here. And then she called back immediately, which anybody who knows, if the wife calls you twice back to back, like you answer, or else you get punched in the throat at home, right?
Yeah.
And so I answer, and it's Amanda, and she's just in tears.
Yeah.
Like she's just in tears. And I'm trying to get through the tears and understand what's going on, and get all these people looking at me and saying, "Hey, we got to do." And I'm just walking the other direction away from all the people, and she's like, "Hey, they're telling me this. I don't believe this. I don't know why they were, but the state of Oklahoma and the state of Virginia, they approach a pain problem very differently, and so the doctors up there, they look at it and they have their own ideas, and so I told Amanda in that moment, like, understood, got it. We don't have to make that decision right now. Let's talk to some more people, and we prayed a lot about this. Right? We prayed for deliverance for this for, like Amanda said, 7 years. Yeah. And then you have this type of difficulty happen and that kind of direction given to you. And then we're praying more about it, right? We want deliverance from it. We want healing from it. But now we want wisdom. Like, just help us figure out what's next, because that just didn't seem like that was the right step for us. And God brought another doctor into our life who looked at Amanda and looked at the situation and said, look, this is going to be really, really hard. But if you trust me and you're willing to put in the work, we can fix this. So then we started a new journey towards healing, and let you kind of finish up on kind of how that went. But that was an answer to prayer in and of itself, just in that moment, having another person be able to come up and look at the situation objectively and say, hey, if you trust me, we can take steps and we can walk this out. Right. So
yeah, that doctor was such a blessing. That he was even willing to try to help me get out of the mess I'd gotten myself in. And he was God just provided exactly the right type of doctor that I needed to see. And so we started this process of weaning me off of all of my medicine. And that was, I don't know if you've ever experienced someone detoxing from anything, but it's awful. It's really awful. And as an ER nurse, I had alcoholics come in, and they were detoxing, and I didn't have a full understanding of exactly how awful those people felt, and that what I experienced gave me an entirely new compassion for those people, because it's really hard. And so, but I just focused on getting. Gosh, it was a minute by minute survival process, honestly.
But we also it was minute by minute. Which, hindsight's always 20/20. You see what God's doing afterwards. But it was minute by minute dependence upon him for healing and deliverance, right? That's really what it came down to, is how much do we trust him to deliver us, and how dependent will we be upon him? And so he drove dependence through this situation. But it was also like there were these little wins where, okay, we hit this milestone. That's awesome. Like, let's celebrate that a little bit. Then we hit the next milestone. That's awesome. Let's celebrate that. So, over time, you start to see God show up and start to provide that deliverance, and your body starts to respond, and you're feeling healing, and you're starting to just move forward. And to Amanda's credit, like she was committed to moving in this direction. So we're praying, we're depending, and she's committed, and we're starting to make real progress, over time.
So, guys, at what point did you realize, like something clicked, and you thought, "Wow, maybe God's orchestrated this whole thing to bring us to this point? Like God has us on a path of healing right now." Yeah. Was there a point that you realized that, or that kind of hit, like, "Oh, wow"?
Yeah. I kind of feel like I wouldn't say initially that made sense. And I wouldn't even say halfway through that made sense. But as we kind of neared the end of our time in Virginia, I had a mentor of mine that he said, "Gabe, you're this has been great. It's been amazing. All of these things. You really need to take stock in what has God shown you? How has he grown you guys? And you should really start writing that down." And Amanda and I started having these conversations about the whole experience. And what became so overwhelmingly clear is that none of that 3 years was about NASA or a job, right? It just wasn't. I can look today. I have a job that ties into space stuff, and so you can say, well, space stuff is a part of it. Sure, space stuff was a part of it, right? But family and healing and dependency, a new dependency upon Christ. In those moments, that's what the journey was about for us. And so I think sometimes you walk all the way through it before you start realizing what God's doing and the type of healing that he's bringing. But from a marital standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a family standpoint, there was healing in each and every one of those areas throughout this process. And so we could look at each other on the backside of this and go, that was it. That was exactly what God was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And it's interesting, the whole time we were praying for healing from the physical pain. And I think that the healing that really happened, though, that I wasn't even praying for, is that God changed my outlook on the strength that he could give me moment by moment to live with some of the pain. And it got to a point where I started to think about the pain differently. And I'll tell you, I still have pain. Every day I have pain, but it does not rule my life anymore. I have, the Lord has just enabled me to set a pace to my own life where I do activities as I'm able to. And when I need to rest, I have a husband who is so gracious and
awesome.
And helps me to have that time when I need to just rest and recover. But just the fact that God healed the way that I was viewing the whole situation. And I tell you what, I don't think that there's any pain I could go through now that I can't say, you know what, the Lord brought me through that. I don't think anything gets worse than that. And I know that whatever comes, I can get through that. Mm-hmm. Like, I know I can get through that. And it's really powerful.
And I love your perspective here is you're not coming out and saying, hey, I'm totally healed. Like, everything's great now. And I think when we hear the word healing, sometimes in our mind, it's that it's not a healing unless it's all good and done. And really, you look at God is definitely a healer, like we're talking about, but a lot of times God is still healing. Like, I look at your story and it's clear, like, God has healed you from a lot, but I would say God is still healing you. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And isn't it great to know that God doesn't partially heal and then walk away? God's still doing the work. Like, I think that's one thing, sitting here and listening to this story, and I'm so glad you shared it with us, is that you can see really clearly, like, you're still walking through some of this, right? Like, you haven't necessarily emerged out the other side of the tunnel, into the glorious light yet, right? but you can see the light, right? Like, and you can see the healing that God's done.
And that's such a good point, because I think sometimes even when we pray for healing, God's idea of healing is different than ours, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We see that in Paul. Like, Paul talks about a thorn in the flesh and how he'd gone to God to God multiple times to have him remove this thorn in the flesh, right? And he was never delivered from that. And I don't know. There's different takes on what that was, what it could have been. But I think there is a level of healing that comes from not the removal of the pain, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, but an ability to depend on God differently. Yeah. And it's that level of healing that ultimately, I love it when he does something physically, right? And you get to see something happen and somebody healed from something. But I also love, the fact that I can sit next to my wife and I can hear her testimony about knowing God differently through this. And we can look at that as spiritual healing and emotional healing and physical healing.
Relational healing for us,
Yeah, so it's just an awesome reminder of Jehovah Rapha, like the God who heals. And like we've said in other other parts of our name studies, like, you see this initial use, but then you fast forward to Jesus's ministry, and how many times were we seeing Jesus heal, right? And I love those stories, because it's those moments of healing that, like, it really focuses people on God's power and his might. And so tonight, what we would just kind of encourage you guys to do with your groups is spend some time talking amongst yourselves about the ways that you've seen God heal. Because I promise you, just like with Amanda's story, there are stories in your group right now that will have a profound impact in the way that somebody approaches a situation that they're encountering and the way that they're seeking healing from God. So after you talk about those situations, we're going to encourage you to pray about them. Pray if there is healing that's necessary, that's needed right now today. We want you to be praying through that. And we also found a really cool song that we'll put at the end of this episode that if you want, you guys can play it and pray through it. It was just a great reminder for us as we listen to it. So,
And Gabe, I just want to, before we close here, I just want to say, I hope that maybe these conversations tonight, maybe they're not super comfortable to have. If we're just going to be really transparent, sometimes we shoot these episodes and they go really easy, right? And sometimes we sit here for an hour and a half. And how do we say this? How do we get through this? And this has been a hard episode, right? For you guys. And I'm so thankful for you guys just sharing the story. And Amanda, especially just sharing something that's been really difficult in your life and not an easy thing to share. But when you share a story like this, and I love what you said off camera, you said, it's not something that I really am excited about sharing, but if it helps one person, it would be all worth it. I love, your heart behind that. And so, you may have a story in your group, and it may be hard to share. And you may be already setting out, and you might have already written it off. I'm not talking about that. I'm not going to go there. And we would never want to force someone to share when you're not ready to share something. But sometimes those difficult stories are the most powerful.
that's right.
They're the most life-changing stories you can share in your group. And so I just want to encourage you. Maybe you're on the fence right now and you're like, man, God's shown me some healing in this area of my life. And you're thinking, do I share it or do I not? I just want to just encourage you, do it, right? Share it. Because just like your story, Amanda, it's a powerful thing when you share with others the healing that God brings. So
Awesome.
Good stuff. All right, that's all for us. We're gonna let you jump into your group time right now, and as Gabe mentioned, we're gonna include a song right now. I think it's a great song, and so plug into that. Enjoy your time tonight with your group discussions, and we'll see you on the next one. God bless you.
God, Jehovah Rapha, you're our healer, you and you alone. We will trust you, Jehovah Rapha, you're our healer, you and you alone. In the middle of the dark, in the thick of sorrow, you say, look up to where our help comes from. If everything around us says there is no hope, I'm never gonna let go the hem of your robe. God, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah